Do you know there is something called the blind trust? Sadly, a lot of you need it, but you don't even know it exists, including government officials, politicians, public servants, and aspiring politicians, and even top management staff of major conglomerates. But first, let's quickly see this life scenario. Many of us are familiar with the case involving the Minister of Interior, where certain amounts of money were traced to a company that he co-founded. The funds were alleged to emanate from a contract scam. But the minister said that he had resigned his appointment as a director in the company since 2019. That is about 4 years before his appointment as the Minister of Interior. And his argument is that because he had resigned, he is no longer involved in the day-to-day administration of the business. And now the question is, does that exonerate him from any form of liability? You should answer that question. However, another question is he still a shareholder in that company? This is a very important question to ask. And this takes us back to where we're coming from. What is a blind trust? You see, a blind trust is an arrangement between the owner of certain properties and investments and a trust company, whereby the trust company holds those assets and properties in trust for the owner of the properties. However, the trust company is not responsible for giving reports about the assets or the investments to the owner of the trust. Secondly, the owner of the trust does not have control over the investments or the actions that happen or the activities that happen during the existence of the trust until that trust is terminated. The owner of the trust or the settlor of the trust cannot advise or give instructions to the trustee as to how to make the investment or as to where to put the funds during the existence of the trust. That is why it is called a blind trust. And this is the fact that the trustee holds the assets and shields the owners of the assets from the activities that take place in the trust. You see, the blind trust is set up by anyone who desires to avoid any form of conflict of interest between his personal investments and his employment or his duties. So if you are a public servant and you do not want your duties to conflict with your personal interest, you need to shield yourself from the properties that you have. You need to separate yourself from all the properties and investments that you have made or that you are potentially going to make. And that is why it's called a blind trust. The question is, who should set up a blind trust? A blind trust is usually applicable to persons holding political offices, government officials, and top management officials in major conglomerates. So this set of persons always have to deal with public interest, deal with public affairs. They have to separate their interest from public interest so that there is no conflict of interest. The question you like to ask me, I know, is how does this blind trust work? First, you would have to give up the properties that you hold in your name to the trustee for the trustee to hold on your behalf. So which means that any document that shows your name or carries your name has to be transferred to the trustee. Secondly, a document called a trust deed would be signed between you and the trust company. And that document will show all the things that the trust company can do and the things that the trust company cannot do. The document would also show your rights in that transaction, in that contract, and what you are entitled to. But of course, the document would also show that it is a blind trust, and as such, you cannot receive certain rights that a settlor in a regular trust would receive, such as reports and feedbacks and discussions and sharing opinions and ideas with the trustees. All of those things cannot happen. Not even an email or a text message would be received or will be sent to you by the trustee. If the trustee does that, the trustee has violated the principles of a blind trust, because the trustee would have punctured or lifted the veil that shields you from the assets that you have put in trust. And to add to that, of course, fees will be paid to the trustee on a periodic basis. Most times, it is paid annually. You pay annual fees to the trustees for offering those services to you. In addition to that, you have to get a corporate trustee, because corporate trustees are licensed by the Securities and Exchange Commission to carry on trusteeship services. The trustees have their license to protect. The trustees act as fiduciaries, and they would not go outside of the provisions of the trust deed because they stand to lose their license. You see, a lot of people are usually afraid that they will lose their properties and assets to the trustee or to the trust company. Yes, that concern is not far-fetched, but there is something that should be of more concern to you, and that is doing the right thing only for you to be said to have done it in the wrong way and be accused wrongly. In conclusion, there are still good people holding public offices. There are good government officials. Now, the good ones, don't subject yourself through some ridicule, humiliation, because you were trying to do good things the wrong way. You can actually do the right thing the right way. Think about this. Set up a blind trust. Separate yourself from your properties so that your decisions will not be misconstrued or misinterpreted as having colorations of negativity.